They come out of the womb looking up, you know? They're there because they feel safe, and then you have deduced like the only place that you can be to get them. And oftentimes it's so thick or so inconvenient that they don't even suspect that you're there. Like both of the deer that I shot were just moseying along. Like it wasn't something that they didn't even think to look up. Everybody's like, oh man, in my region, they look up. They were born looking up. The deer looking up in the sky. You know, it's like, so I could tell you the same thing. Hunting deer in North Carolina is freaking tough. And like they come out of the womb looking up, you know? But the reality is when you hunt them in security cover, they're just kind of doing their thing.
Yep.
You know, because they're there because they feel safe. Versus like if you hunt them in a big wide open oak flat off the side of a hill slope or off of a mountain face, dude, they're switched on.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp. With the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we are live. We're back at the NWTF show, and when I say back at the NWTF show, I don't know when this one's coming out, so I shouldn't say it. We're at the NWTF show. Yes, and I've got my friend Jacob Lishen here with me. And Jacob, you were on the podcast last year. Do you remember that?
I wasn't. Yeah, vaguely. It's difficult to remember. It was a whirlwind.
Yeah. But we didn't talk anything about deer hunting.
No, we didn't talk anything about deer hunting. We talked everything about creative and production.
Yeah.
All sorts of like marketing and content related life journey type things.
Yeah, that was a really fun conversation.
I think it's important. I think sometimes it's important to have chats like that because it's one thing, we all love to hunt, but sometimes we forget that there's another component to our lives. And it's like being efficient at hunting is one thing, and then also having your life together outside of hunting is another thing. And I think everybody's careers tend to mirror. Your success in hunting is mirrored by your success and your direction in your career oftentimes, and like alleviating that stress. So I feel like we covered a lot of topics on like self-improvement and how to focus on your career and what it's like being a creative in the space and all stuff you know very well about, but I think it's cool to share.
No, I think that was a really good podcast with you and Matt and your company Land Limited.
Thanks, man.
And since then we had teased about that, the film Why Whitetails, that for Hoyt that you guys were working on, and that's why you were at my house and we were doing that. Now that film is out there.
It's out there. Yeah. It took a long time, a lot of production time, but we made it happen, and it was cool just getting the chance to like shoot those late season visuals with you, which is super awesome. Being in the big woods in Pennsylvania and getting to see where Beau calls home.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was a journey, just like building that project in general. Because obviously we're all passionate about deer hunting and have grown up in the culture, but kind of hearing everybody's perspectives and being able to put that together into its own story, which was hard in and of itself because we all love it, but like you love it intricately different than maybe somebody else. So it's like it was a story that we built that had a bunch of different reasons. So tying it all together was challenging, but I was really proud of the end result. And I know Matt put a lot of time into post-production in that, and our whole team was really focused on trying to make sure that came together. So it was cool. We spent like 7 or 8 weeks on the road traveling for that and putting things together, and got to meet some cool people, and you and Bill Winke and a bunch of folks, and have gotten to build relationships with those people since. So exciting.
Yeah, it turned out great. I was pumped to see that. I love those types of stories that are more than just the hunt, and that one was a really special one. So I highly recommend anybody that's listening, and if you haven't seen it already, even if you have, just go over and check it out again. Check it out again, get those view counts climbing so that they can do more films like that.
Beau and I got to eat, so the better the view counts are, the more food we can afford.
Listen,
Eggs are
guys,
expensive these days.
Just put on the channel, my channel, that film, put it on repeat while you're sleeping. Let's get that view count up. Watch time. Let's get it going.
We're not asking you. You don't have to watch it yourself all the time, but just let it replay all night. Just let it go when you're not you're just helping us out.
Yeah.
It's not really a big thing.
And why should you help us out? Because we're great guys.
Because we have a beer at NWTF.
Yeah.
We're great guys.
I have a White Claw. So.
Beau's a White Claw. We were just chatting about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the people that had listened to it before know that I have a gluten allergy, but so yeah, it's either seltzers or bourbon if I'm having a drink.
It's a legitimate gluten allergy. It's not one of those fake LA gluten allergies.
No, if I wish it was fake.
Yeah.
Because I would break it a lot. So no, I was just recording a podcast with Catman, and
that's why we're back at NWTF now.
Yeah, that's why we're back. But I don't know which order these were going to come out in. But you came in and you're like, "Want to grab a beer?" I was like, "You know what? That sounds just fine."
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just feel like anytime you end up in a conversation, whether it's a podcast or even at times where I'll have a meeting at a booth or get the chance to go talk to somebody, you spend 30 minutes or an hour, however long that conversation goes, and afterwards your brain is just kind of you're switched on for that whole conversation, so your brain is kind of mush. So it's helpful to just stretch your legs, walk, grab a beer, kind of cool down a little bit, and then get started. And you were stoked enough to be able to let me continue to roll with this podcast afterwards, which is a hard follow-up to Catman. That's going to be a hard one. I'm going to really do my best.
Yeah,
you guys have to make sure that, don't judge me too hard because I'm not going to be as good as Catman.
Well, might have to put yours first then. So it's like climbing up the hill.
Finish the best for last.
I'm just kidding, man. You do a really good job at telling stories, and that was one of the. Well, I wanted you to come on to talk whitetail stuff. Since I'd met you and we've talked a lot, offline about things, and then I was like, when you had texted me this year and the incredible year that you had, but it wasn't just the fact that you shot two really, really big deer for the South and the places that you hunt, but it was, I feel like the things that you pulled from it, even outside of the, the tips and the tactics and everything, that's all important and we love that stuff. But the other things that you pulled from it, I think when I read your post that you'd put on Instagram towards the end of the year there, I was like, I just really enjoyed it. And I think it needs to be amplified out there for people to hear.
Yeah, I think, oh man, I don't know. I think about, I feel like we live in this space, right? And I think we're all guilty of it and I find myself continuously, it's not something that's you make a shift or you make a mental change and all of a sudden you exist in this space or you exist in this weird thing. It's we're all actively learning and growing, right? And you're constantly in this tug of war with why you're doing something and why you feel this way. And I think that, the last 3 hunting seasons I've had have been kind of challenging. I've made some mistakes, I've lost a couple deer, I've missed a couple deer, and I think that you end up in this position where whether you're a small fish in a big pond like me, or whether you're a giant shark in a pond like Beau.
Oh, shut up!
The reality is you end up kind of sometimes you can focus on the wrong things, and I think that focusing on the wrong things is takes us away from why. Kind of even touching a little bit on the parallel between why whitetails with the film, but why we all love hunting to begin with in the first place, right? And a lot of that is based on, the nostalgia and the feelings of community and connectivity. And I think I spent a lot of time this year, even when I shot those deer, I had told you on the phone prior to this podcast, was I wasn't even sure I was going to post about them, because I think I'm trying to better understand how, what hunting really means to me and what, shooting a big deer means to me and why that's important to me. And, whether at times, what does the pursuit mean to me? And, can I draw things from it that aren't just selfish, And I think that that's reapplying my thought process and bringing bringing myself back to center, I think, and then focusing on shared experiences and focusing on learning has made me has made me a more lethal hunter. I feel like I was a good hunter prior to, but it's made me more effective at getting the job done, and it's made those experiences more valuable, like at the end of the day, because I'm still chasing big deer because I want to chase big deer, but I think I'm stepping back from like maybe more of like the selfish industry feelings that I feel like sometimes we aren't always honest with ourselves about. It's like, yeah, I want to shoot a big deer because it's cool and that there's accolades associated with it. Well, that's not really a healthy mentality to have, even though it's the real world. It's like it's what we live in, you know?
I think that also is prevalent outside of just, the quote unquote hunting industry as well, just with buddies or just people online of like this. And I mean, I think in some ways it's interesting because I've thought about this a lot too, but I think in some ways this has always been a thing, but it's amplified now because there has been like before you'd see like the local, gun shop or whatever, you'd take your picture in there and you'd hang it on like the bragging rights board in there. Or it was like around where I grew up, it was also the newspaper. You take it down, you get entered in a big buck contest in the newspaper. And it was like, man, you wanted to be somebody in there.
And it's like, that's a healthy level of ego though.
Yes. That's, and I guess that could be argued too, a little bit of competition isn't bad either.
Correct. I think that it's like the amount of ways we can like digest content. So it's like obviously like having the bragging board at your local shop is cool, but like even that bragging board it's exciting to have your picture up there because it's shared success, right? Like you want to be part of the success of the whole community. At least that's how it felt for me when I would walk into like, growing up, we grew up deer hunting in South Georgia, and like our local grocery store in South Georgia had they were also like a deer processor. So whenever we'd show up, there was always like a new Polaroid picture, and you always wanted to be part of that group of men or women who had harvested a mature deer. It was like a cool thing. It was like, it didn't matter whether your deer scored 110 inches or 180 inches. It was that you were on the wall with them, And I think now, the wall is so individual. It's your social media page. It's just you. It's not like you alongside 100 other men or women up there, celebrating that experience together. It's like, I got to shoot this and I got to put it out there to get like the return, the emotional turn, the instant gratification, the dopamine hit of doing that. And I think everybody's guilty of that. And I certainly was. And I think what I'm getting at is like it's not like I was seeking that necessarily, but I think that it bleeds into your mindset, right? And I think that if you're not hunting for the right reasons, it makes you get agitated more quickly. Like you're not taking in the experience the way you should, which means you're not learning the way you should when you're in the woods, which means you're not, and you're not sharing it with other people. And it's like this slippery slope that you go down. And I think I was there. And I think like the 2 seasons prior to this one, I had 3 or 4 seasons prior to 2 years ago that were killer. I was killing 2 or 3 bucks a year. But I was just like living my life. And then as I got more into the industry and more working with people and attending places, there kind of felt like there was this expectation, right? Like, and I'm sure you feel it too. It's like, Beau is expected to kill this year and expected to kill a good one. And like that, I didn't know I was not experienced that. And I'm, like I said, small fish in a big pond. But even in my little circle, that expectation was like kind of heavy, and it affected like the urgency at which I pressured myself to travel to places to hunt, to approach the way I hunted, and it affected my personal relationships. It affected my work life, and both like it put me in positions of prioritizing things that probably I shouldn't have prioritized, and it ultimately made me a worse hunter. I think I was out there all the time, but I wasn't hunting the way that I should have been. So I think these 2 deer, and why I thought about it for a long time, and then I shared the stories of those deer after the season was completely over because I wanted to take time to digest them, they were representations of things that I changed in my life that led me to those experiences. both sharing the woods with other people more, which I had been trying to do already, but taking that as a priority. And then also, not beating a dead horse in the pursuit of a single deer. Like I was hunting the same deer that I was hunting for 3.5 years was one of the 2 deer I killed, but I gave myself more leniency in making mistakes and figuring him out. And it ultimately resulted in success in that harvest, So it's kind of like a mindset shift. I don't know. It's hard to I feel like hopefully I'm explaining it correctly.
No, I think you're explaining it. I think you're explaining it really well. And I can relate, and I have said it on this podcast recently because it's been top of mind. So whenever I think of things, I have to say it multiple times. So I apologize for that. But I think it relates to your conversation just as talking to you about it is I go back to a few years back, I had a tough season, and it was the first year since I was 12, I think, that I didn't kill a deer in PA, and I hunted hard. I mean, I was out there a lot, and just things didn't line up, and I felt like a loser, and it's okay to feel failure, and
it's important.
And I think it is important to feel it, accept it, and want to improve on it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I felt this pressure of trying to just be successful on every hunt as I was going out there. And this past year especially, I was able to step back from that. And when I went on that moose hunt with my dad and my brother, that was the perfect trip for it. Every morning, same thing. I'd canoe out in the dark with the headlamp. Beavers would slap their tail at me, scare the shit out of me, almost fall out of the boat. Get to the spot, sit there, and I was patient. I was sitting there, and I'd said it on camera when we were driving back. I don't think I even really knew Derek was recording at this time. We were in my truck, and I was just like, man, we hadn't seen a moose in 5 days at that point or anything. We'd heard them, everything. But I said, I just feel full. I feel good.
Yeah.
I said I could do this every day and be fine. Or if I could go home tomorrow, I would. This was great. I got to spend time with my brother, my dad. Got to just sit there and not have anybody around and just experience it. Where work had been so busy and I'd been doing a lot of things and just I felt like my to-do list was getting so long. I was able to really disconnect and be there, present in that moment. And then the next morning, the moose walks out and I shoot him at 200 yards. It was what?
Dude, there's something so special about that. I think about this all the time when I'm walking into the woods. Is when I leave the truck and I start walking. So many times I almost can tell you when I'm on the walk into my set. Whether or not I think whether or not I know I'm going to harvest something. I know it sounds dumb, but it's I can tell the energy that I'm bringing into the woods with me. And it's every time I've ever harvested, any of my better deer, so any of my big bucks that I've harvested, I went in and sat down and was it's just nice to be here. I'm just I feel like I'm in the right spot. I've got no worries in the world. There's no weight on my shoulders. I'm just if it happens, it happens. I'm in a tree that's comfortable, I'm comfortably leaning. It's everything is just, it's like the sunrise is just perfect, and it doesn't mean that the weather's always great in those moments.
Yeah.
I've had some of them in bad weather days, but it's it doesn't feel like anytime that happens, and I may not shoot the buck until 4 hours later. It's just that in the moment when that I can just feel, it's you can feel it in the air. There's just not this compression of stress and anxiety. And then anytime I do have those feelings and I'm in that position, I feel like I'm just way more apt to either not see anything at all, make a mistake, or get busted. It's carrying it into the woods. I don't know, I feel just trickling into the tin hat space. We'll just toss it on the head is the deer having the ability to have some level of sixth sense, or whether it's that, or whether it's just you not being in the game and being comfortable with your set and what you're doing and how you're approaching the woods means that you're making more mistakes, even if you don't realize it. But whatever it is, carrying that weight of the world, whether it's the ego stroke or whether it's the stress in your everyday life, carrying that into the woods is inevitably what I think ruins a lot of guys' hunts, ruined a lot of my hunts, and still does. I think it's, an ongoing battle. It's not something that you just fix, but But yeah, I mean, and the moose thing is a testament, right? Like you were just fulfilled and happy with the experience. And the next morning out, you're just like, oh, I'm happy to be here. Boom. There he is. Right. You know?
And it seemed to just roll from there of like, I just kept that mindset, like going through everything. I was just like going out, having fun. And there was, when I went to West Virginia and I wasn't successful, and I watched a nice buck go past me that normally I would have shot, but I was having a really good year, and I was like, I don't feel inclined to shoot this buck, and I watched him and got to watch him fight another deer and do all this stuff, and I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I just think it's healthy for us. I think it's healthy for hunters in general to just like what I'm trying to do more is to just reflect on like why I do the things that I do, whether it's why I'm setting up in a specific tree or why I'm out there hunting or what is driving me to harvest a certain caliber deer. Am I doing it because I want to or because I want an accolade, and like referring that to being like, when I was 9 years old or 10 years old and I was hunting with my dad for the first time, why was I there? Like what made me so passionate about it that I'm carrying it on today? And it was never like having this big rack deer to be able to like show off or to get further in my career or to get further in, the positive response and feedback of those around me. It was because like I was just excited to share that experience with those people in my life. So I think that's been the biggest like change of pace. And it's actually focused on, like you and I were talking on the phone the other day about, like, I'm pretty confident I can draw Kansas this year, but I don't know, which I feel like to some people will be like, of course you draw Kansas. You can draw Kansas. You can go to Kansas. Same thing with Iowa. It's like, yes, and I can. And I've hunted solo and lived out of the back of my truck for the last 8 years on and off. But I don't know if I want to do that if I can't, like, I feel confident I can go to Kansas and probably shoot a good one. Hopefully, knock on wood. But at the same time, if I shoot a good one in Kansas and I'm sitting there with it on the ground and there's nobody there to share it with, how much is it worth? I would rather like get another point in Kansas this year and not hunt Kansas and go to a different deer camp with 5 or 6 guys and share that with them and then put together a Kansas deer camp and then share that with people versus just go by myself and shoot a 170 because I want to put it on Instagram and then be like, yeah, I shot this buck and I spent 20 days in Kansas by myself. Like, well, that sounds like a miserable time, dude. That sounds like you spent 20 miserable days eating cold tuna in a car. To be able to harvest a great deer. And it's a great deer. Don't get me wrong. Like a giant deer is a giant deer. Kudos to you. And there's something to be said for grinding it out on one. But at the same time, it's like, it would have been more fun shooting a 170 in Kansas and calling 5 of your buddies that are there with you in camp and having them come recover it with you in the middle of like a bean field or in a hedgerow somewhere. That's the experience I want now. Like, I don't want the experience. I don't want to say I don't want the experience of shooting a booner because that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I dang sure would rather celebrate it with somebody else.
Yes, I totally understand what you're saying there because I don't remember if you said that first or I said that first because I also could draw a Kansas tag as well. And I was like, man, I don't know if that's what I want to do this year or not. I'm not saying I won't, but I'd like it to, I want it to be that experience of like, with people. And it doesn't mean like we're all just like huddled up in the tree together. You still can go out and hunt your ass off and hunt hard and hunt the way you want to hunt. It's just like being able to celebrate that with people. And I mean, I felt like, and I really enjoyed this. Like when I went to Ohio in late season, and I like to have a little bit of mixture in some of my hunts. I do like some of that solo stuff and doing that a little bit and challenging yourself as a time and place for it for me personally. But it is kind of a drag when you do like walk up to it and it's like, yeah, you can get on FaceTime or whatever, but it's not the same of like having someone there with you.
Well, and two, I think it's like I hunt like when I'm home, right? When I like where I live in central North Carolina, like when I'm hunting at home or really anywhere in North Carolina, I'm hunting by myself. I have friends that live within driving distance of me that can come share those experiences, and I'm sharing, waypoints with or talking with, and we're talking about the deer that each of us is hunting. So it's a shared experience, but we're all close enough, even though we live in obviously separate homes. It's kind of like a localized deer camp, right? So versus like if I drive to Illinois or I drive to Kansas, I'm there by myself for a long, like probably for 7 to 10 days, and there's nobody else there. You get your truck stuck, you're the one to get out of the the sandy, silty road. You deal with this, you harvest a deer, you're by yourself. And versus like at home, I do enough of the semi-solo stuff that like that fills my cup with that. And then, but when I travel, like we do a deer camp in Alabama every year, and this is the 5th year that we've done it. And it's, open to any of my like friends and acquaintances that want to come. We rent a big Airbnb. We get a bunch of guys together, and it's started off as a bow camp and has evolved into a rifle camp because it's just a no frills, chill, have fun, shoot whatever you want to shoot, and then let's celebrate. And like this year, I think we shot like 10 or 11 deer between 6 guys, and like 5 of them were really good. Were like pretty good bucks. And like, it was like every night you were waiting on the text message from the group chat, like to know who shot one and who brought one home. And then like you'd come home and everybody was hugging everybody and like, dude, congrats. And like we're, hanging up deer heads and putting meat in coolers. And it's like, man, I still want the ability to pursue the deer that I want to pursue, but I want to marry that experience with that community experience that I grew up with and that I'm, taking a higher priority in right now.
Yeah. I love that. And I think, I don't know if it's just like the people that I talk to or if this is kind of going nationwide, but like, I feel like there's a lot of that shift in people wanting to have that deer camp feel. I say it all the time, but I can't stress this enough. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and purchase 4 walls and have this, camp that you go to in one singular place. Now that's sweet. I highly recommend it if you can do that. But renting an Airbnb, setting up a wall tent, just sleeping in vehicles, just being able to do that with friends, family, close ones together. That is what it's about.
Yeah. Well, that's why we all like. I keep harping on that. Is it's like just reflecting on why you fell in love with hunting as an activity in general, and like a lot of the states, and obviously I'm sure you've talked about it in different podcasts and different groups. It's like everybody's like, man, tag numbers are dropping off. We're not selling enough licenses. We're not doing this. And I was like, well, it's hard to retain hunters when it's a solo thing that's hard to do, and like a lot of our public land, it's hard to hunt. Like no matter where you are, whether you're in North Carolina, whether you're in PA, whether you're in Ohio, you got pressure, you got people, you got, sometimes low deer numbers, you got, low mature buck numbers. And if you're a new hunter coming in that doesn't have the support structure that we had in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, man, that's tough. Like I think about guys coming in today that don't have that community around them or girls that are coming in today and they don't have the ability to like step into hunting with a parent figure or a group of close friends or a family group that's like, this is how you do this, or, congratulations, you shot this doe. Like that's just as big of a deal as shooting anything else. Man, it's tough, So, I think it's important. And I think that like, that's why we as a community are talking about it more is because, if our goal here is to retain and preserve, this thing that we love, I think we need to refocus our ideology away potentially from like, glorifying just the big buck on the wall. And then instead, like you can still have that big buck on the wall, but like glorify the experience surrounding it and the people that you shared it with the same way you would have in 1997 at a deer camp in southern Wisconsin. Like, like that's what's cool to me. Or when you're doing deer drives in PA when you were a kid, like that's what you remember. That's what we tell stories about. And like, if we can, there's parts of our country where that still exists, and I think that's great. But if, as a whole, across our industry, if we can refocus our direction into that and then marry the passion and the pursuit of big bucks to the nostalgic feel of community and togetherness, I think we'll solve all of our problems, quite frankly,
Jacob for president. We got it, man. I like it.
So
that was a very well spoken. You're very well spoken on how you put that out there, and I sometimes I have hard a hard time articulating those words and explaining that. Like when I was speaking out against a few things that had been changed in Pennsylvania that people didn't agree with me on, they're like, "Oh, you could just go to your camp and drink beer and and you're not a serious hunter," like that type of deal. It's like, man, you're not understanding. It's not about just all going and drinking beer, and I mean that's fun too. Don't get me wrong, but like
White Claw.
White Claw. I don't even drink beer. But it's the fact of that camaraderie feeling and being around people and having that support system and those other people that make those solo walk-ins in the woods and going out there and hunting and experiencing that so much better when you can come back and talk about it and share it with people. Like that to me is what it's about. And I think that helps retain hunters more than just increasing opportunity or making it easier.
Yeah, I think people, I think like we focus sometimes so much on like I don't want to like beat a dead horse here with like the whole license and tag sales thing, but like we focus so much on like acquiring new hunters and not on the experience that they have and how we need to focus on that, both in like the experience that they have when they're on public or private land, but then also the experience that they have within their community. And like reinforcing positive engagement and positive resources within the space, all the way down to like the visual aids that we use to incentivize people to go hunting or how they should be engaging with one another in the hunting space. And like I said, it's like you said it perfectly. Go out and hunt, do your solo thing, but then like come back and share that experience with people around the table. Like, man, when I go in and hunt, especially like with those 2 deer that I harvested this year, I wasn't always walking into the woods with a buddy. Like there were times where I shared the woods going in and hunting a piece of property with a friend. Most of the time I'm hunting alone, but I'm coming back and like I get back to the truck and I'm immediately calling a friend and like, this is what I saw, this is how it's going. Or like we're meeting back up at the house or we're meeting back up at the truck. He was hunting here and I was hunting there. Or, same thing in like Alabama or, what I hope to continue to do when I go to the Midwest and hunt more, in the future is like to refocus on those shared experiences and marry them to the solo pursuit. And I think I think it's like, I don't know, it's like it's like a healthy ego, right? It's like not so much ego that you don't isolate yourself on an island is I guess where it's at.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, I'm interested to hear your answer. And you said, you've been asking yourself why you're doing that. Why are you still pursuing like those big deer, those singular deer that you're chasing?
I think that there's a personal allure and a goal associated with the level of effort that it takes to harvest a big one. So like, I hunt probably 80-90% public land. I do have some private spots that I have the luxury of like having built relationships, permission places that I can go bounce around and hunt. But usually they don't have anything big. They're good meat freezer spots or places I can take other people. Or like one of my close friends, Chris, he takes his daughter and son out there to hunt out of a ground blind. Like that's super valuable to me. But I think that I kind of equate it to like if you've ever like met like an old guy. Like, I feel like I'm an old man, even though I'll be 34 in a couple weeks, is like, I'll use my dad, for example. He would hate this if he heard me calling him an old guy, making this reference to this podcast. But like, if I take
we need to clip that.
Yeah, clip that. If I take my dad hunting, like, dad's only going to shoot what he feels inclined to shoot, not because he's like just looking to put something on the wall, right? Because dad has hunted for a long time. Like he doesn't have to kill every buck that he sees, So for me, like harvesting a big one is harvesting a deer that is harder to harvest for my area. It's a goal that is unique to me. It requires me to learn the landscape better, to be more invested in my experience, and to do something that is inherently me focused, because I'm trying to attribute myself to something, but also because, like this season, I passed a bunch of deer that were good deer for North Carolina, deer that were 100 to 100 and probably 25 inches. Those are typical good deer. Like our state book, as you would call it, is like 100-inch for an archery kill, and like I think 120 for a rifle kill is the way they manage the state books, not the like federal Boone or whatever.
Pope
the
and
national
Young and Boone Crockett.
So, we don't have a lot of big giant deer running around. So it's like I let a lot of those deer go because I just didn't personally feel compelled to harvest them. The bigger deer were of interest to me because of the difficulty of that accomplishment, but not because I was excited to like shoot one and then walk up and like immediately publish it on social media. It was because I felt like inclined to accomplish a goal. The same way that as a 34-year-old, I'm not going to go to the NFL, but I still go to the gym working out to try to accomplish challenging goals because they're better it helps me be a better person in the long run. I think that inevitably you're going to, as a human being, have an interest in like pushing for something greater, pushing for a harder challenge. And I think that I'm at a space where I appreciate, like, the buck that I shot in Alabama probably wasn't 100 inches, but I was super thrilled that I harvested a buck in Alabama. Okay. Yeah. I was super thrilled that I harvested a buck in Alabama and was just as stoked about that, and then getting to pack him out and share that experience with the people in camp that I was with as I was shooting one of the big ones. Now, like, the stoke was equal. Now, I'm not saying that, like, I wasn't thrilled to have shot a 150 in North Carolina and be like it's like the same but different. But it's like that experience in hunting a big one doesn't change the fact that I'm also can find joy in the other things. Like, I'm trying to think about how to be.
So I'll give you an example where I can feel like where I relate to this, and I've said it before. I feel like not too many people share the same sentiment, or at least don't say they do, but like I call them my floating goals on, like, depending on where I'm at and the experience I'm looking for out of it. In 2021, I shot my biggest ever archery deer in PA, something I always try to challenge myself in Pennsylvania. It's my home state. I put in the most time to it. Went to a completely new state in New York, never been to the area before until that morning I walked in, on the ground, stalked in, and shot one of the smallest 7-points you could possibly shoot by stalking him underneath this feed tree that they were feeding under, and then packed him out. And I was equally as excited for both of those experiences because there was different goals and what I was looking for out of that hunt. Yeah. And it didn't mean that, one of them meant more or less.
Yeah, it's like my pursuit of a big deer at home, right, is based on the fact that I am challenging myself to accomplish a goal in my area that I feel like is difficult to accomplish because I want to challenge myself personally, and because I know that it's attainable. Now, does that mean that if I, like, let's say next year I roll into season and there's not another 140 or 150 on camera, I'm going to go shoot whatever the best deer I find is? Like, I'm not going to get discouraged and be like, whatever. It just so happened that the best deer that I've been able to hunt for the last 2 or 3 years was a big one, right? So maybe that's the right answer, is like, I'm hunting the best deer I can challenge myself with because it's the oldest deer for my area. It's the most challenging thing for me to put on my plate because I don't need to shoot a racked buck every year to be happy. I film my doe harvest, at least half of it in my state every year, to attribute to our state's conservation goals, but also to fill my freezer. Like, I'm not in the group of guys that's just like, I want to shoot any racked buck because I don't have the capability to shoot a doe. If I want to shoot meat deer, we need to harvest does biologically as a country. So, like, I'll shoot 2 or 3 does and fill my freezer, and then I don't have this inclination where I have to shoot every buck that I run across. Right? Mm-hmm. I want to shoot the one that it feels compelling to me. And sometimes that's a 100-inch deer, a 90-inch deer in Alabama. Sometimes that's a 150-inch deer in North Carolina. So a lot of times that's a 98-inch deer in North Carolina. Sometimes it's a 140-inch deer in Illinois. It's just whatever I happen to be pursuing or available to pursue in that moment in time, I'm gonna go after. And if one of my buddies, like that first buck that I was hunting this year, like, I had scouted that spot, took a buddy in there to learn how to scout, at least the way that I do it, and then gave him like right of rein to that spot where I was like, hey dude, you hunt this deer. I'm sure there's a good one in here. You hunt him. And then when he got him on camera, I was like, oh my gosh, he's a really good, he's like the biggest deer I've seen on public here other than like one or two in a long time. And then he hunted him, and I was helping him and trying to tell him. And I told him like the tree where I would kill him if it was that, like if I was to hunt him. And then John hunted him a bunch and just wasn't able to put the cards together. And he was like, hey, I've got another deer on camera. I'm going to go hunt him. He's like, you should go hunt that deer. So I started hunting him and killed him out of the tree that I told John I would kill him out of if I was going to do it. And like, but in the meantime, I wasn't like salty that I wasn't hunting that deer. You know, it was a healthy decision for me to share that experience with somebody, to give him the right of the opportunity, because I had other deer to hunt and I was hunting other deer. Now, the other deer I was hunting, were they as big as that one? No, you know? So it's like, if I wanted to be like, you know, for lack of better words, if I want to be a dick, I could have been like, dude, get the hell out of here. I want to hunt this deer because he's the biggest deer around, and like all I care about is shooting the biggest possible buck I can shoot. It's like, no, I just want to shoot a good buck for my area. You know?
Yeah.
Because that's my personal goal. It's not because I'm like, I want, you know, I have this desire to, I don't know, like it's not because I have this desire to like receive the accolades and people's admiration when you shoot a big one are cool, but I almost feel a little like gross about it at the same time. You know, like what matters to me is that's why I told you I was debating whether or not I wanted to share it. And when I did share those deer on social media, I gave these long write-ups that I hope were impactful to other people in a way of like, I'm not going to tell you how I broke down this piece of public land and how I found this buck and how many this and this and this. I'm going to tell you like what this deer meant to me and what it did for me personally, and how it made me think and how it challenged me. And I think so far, so much we get like, even like sharing like the tactics, sometimes it can be like it feels like you're sharing that to get people to be, not you specifically, but we as a community can be sharing.
You must have knew my next question.
Yeah. We as a community can be like, oh man, I want to like go through every intricate like thing that I had to figure out, and every rub that I had to, and everything that I had to overcome, and every this and every that, so that like people are like, man, you were grinding out, like good call on finding that scrape, and then good call at going 60 yards to the left, and then good call at that rub. And it's like, you know, it feels, at least I don't want to say it's that way for everybody, but it feels like that's where we're at as an industry sometimes, is like we're like sharing our decisions leading up to the harvest in an effort to get more admiration, whereas we should be like focused on like share the deer because the deer, like the buck, deserves to be shared as like an awesome animal regardless of the size that he is, and then share what he meant to you and what you learned from him, you know, because I feel like that's what we all grew up with.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about that is, it's funny because I've had conflicting thoughts on like, you know, when it comes to, and I do share a lot about like tactics, and the reason where I can play devil's advocate to what you had said is I enjoy, like, I genuinely want to know what that tree looked like that you killed that deer out, because not because of like to hear you boast about how great of a hunter you are. I don't think that way about you. I want to know just for my own, to visualize and help with the story and being able to create this mental image in my head and maybe learn something from it too.
And I'm the same way. And I think maybe like, you know, sometimes I do really good at articulating things. And then a lot of the time I kind of like will talk myself into the right way I want to say something. And I think like this is one of those instances where it's like I am lucky enough to like have like an event much like your mountain scouting camp, where I get to learn, like not only learn from people but also help people and teach folks about how to learn and how I approach properties. So there's totally something to be said for sharing tactics and sharing those experiences. And I'm a diehard podcast listener, much like I'm sure you are. I listen to a slew of podcasts where I'm constantly digesting information about tactics and tips and how to be better myself. I think it's more so about like the reason why
why you're sharing that.
Why you're sharing that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, not to devalue like when I talk to my buddy Chris or John or talk to you, like, dude, I'll break down every inch of how that process went because I'm excited to share it with you because I know you are thinking about it from a different perspective. Like, I'm sharing it with you because you value the experience as a whole, right? Not because I'm like, I'm going to tell Beau how I killed this buck and how I made this decision because Beau's going to think better of me because he's going to think I'm a better hunter at the end of the day. Like that's...
I might buy you another Busch Light.
Right, yeah. You give me another Busch Light. So it's less about the action itself and more about your internal reflection. And I'm sure somebody out there is going to be like, man, that's a liberal ideology and blah, 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 and you're soft for thinking that way, and we just go out and kill to kill and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, do you, whatever you want to do, But for me, like, I just find more value in the deeper meaning behind what I'm doing. And I think that when I approach things like that, when I approach my pursuit, like hunting in life and my career goals, when I reflect on those deeper meanings and what those things mean, and like when I do share details about it, I think it makes me a better person if I like think about why I'm doing it, why I'm sharing it this way. Like it's a kind of like its own healthy, like therapeutic process to make you a better person,
Have you ever, I think asking that question of why is important, even when, think about, if you ever been in a situation where someone says something and you get mad and you get defensive, do you ever wonder sometimes why? And a lot of times it's because maybe you didn't do something that like, and you're getting defensive on that. I've ran across this many times where I catch myself of being like defensive on something. It's like, and then I'm like, wait, is that because I'm self-conscious of what I'm actually doing and going through it? And I think it's good to go through it. Now I've also overthought things and almost like not shared something. I'll give you an example. I had put an Instagram post out the other day talking about me struggling with some certain things in business and like trying to shut it down and disconnect. Man, I had this thing written up and I almost deleted it. I was like, no one wants to hear about this that's going on with me. Like, who am I to share these things? And the amount in that post, it was so different than any whitetail related post I had out there. The amount of people that reached out were like, dude, like that I've felt the same way. Like we're like, and there was connection that came from that I didn't expect, or I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, it makes a lot of
that.
sense. I think that it's just like, like growing up, everybody like, when you're in a classroom, like teachers would always be like, no question is a dumb question. Because if you feel like you have a question about something, like in school, at least some of my teachers or professors in college would be like, if you have a question, ask, because somebody else in the room probably has the same question and just isn't as confident to ask it. And like, you may need to be the domino that gets things moving. And I think that like a lot of times, especially in like whether it's sports like football or whether it's in pursuits like hunting or fishing, I like to delineate the two because I think they're different. I don't think hunting is a sport, and that's an opportunity for another conversation.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that the reality is like we exist in kind of like this like masculine sphere where we it's kind of we're more accustomed to like shoving down those thoughts and feelings than we are about sharing them in a healthy way. Now, that's not saying like you need to go cry on everybody's shoulder all the time, right? But it just means it's like sometimes if you feel a certain way, it's okay to just be like, hey, dude, man, I'm struggling with this. Like just call a buddy up, or, if you want to share something on social media, just be transparent, because the reality is you're probably not the only one that's thinking that way. And I would encourage people who are probably listening to this or will listen to this, if Beau ever decides to put it out there,
yeah, I'll probably delete
it. Considering how good Catman's episode is going to be, I love Catman. I'm just like trolling Catman this entire episode for no reason at all. But like I think that there's I just think that there's nothing wrong with just being transparent about like things that we struggle with, and like I think that that's something that I have been, because like you grow up playing football or basketball or whatever athletics you're involved in, and like you're taught to be like, push that down, like deal with that shit, like you're fine, like don't think about it too much, like get over it, and it's like you can do that, but at the same time, like you can't learn from it if you don't like talk through it and share it, and like that was the value of like deer camps, right? Like we'll just bring it round table back to like your community events as a kid growing up. Let's say you're 12 years old, right? Your dad lets you walk to the ladder stand for the first time. You hop up in there, the biggest deer, a good deer on the property walks out, boom, you shoot right over his back. Like that's what I did with a bow, Well, when that happened to me when I was like 12 years old and I shot over, like at that time, one of the biggest deer we knew about on our lease in Georgia, shot clear over his back. When that happened, I was so upset, but like going back to the camp, you're surrounded by like other men and people that are like, hey, dude, it happens.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, what you're going to do? You're going to wake up tomorrow morning. You're going to go sit in the stand again. If a doe walks by, you're going to shoot that, and you'll be stoked that you shot that. And it's like, it's the same thing with our personal goals and life decisions, and whether it's like challenges that we encounter in the woods or challenges in our career or in our relationship lives, is like, I think we get so caught up in being like, I don't want to share this. It's like, but sharing it is what helps. Mm-hmm. It's what helped you get better as a hunter. It's what helped you get further along in your career. So like, I think it's just kind of like, once again, I think reflection is something that's super healthy for us as a hunting community to do, and I think it can solve a lot of our problems. Versus like, sometimes we just kind of run headlong into stuff and be like, well, we're just going to tackle this and deal with it, instead of like, let's pause for a second, let's think about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And then
I'm a king of like, something's like, you're like, you need to really deeply think about something. It's like, all right, just keep myself busy, then I won't think about it.
Yeah.
Or like something's like wrong, and it's like, something's like wrong, and I need to like really figure out what's wrong with what's going on, situation, life, personal, whatever. And it's like, let's just shift over here and go hard,
Dude, I'm so the same. I'm like so bad about like, especially in relationships. I'm like, I'm super, I don't ever want to make anybody upset. Like, I don't like that. I don't like when women cry. I don't like anything that involves like a negative confrontation with somebody. I love debate and conversation, but as soon as it goes south, I like clam up. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So if I know that there's going to be confrontation around a subject, whether it's in my personal life or around a decision that I'm making, a lot of times I'll just ignore it. Like you were talking about, I'll work, or I'll focus on something else, or I'll go hunting, or I'll go do something, and I'll like not think about it. And that's not the right decision. Like the better process is to address why you're doing something head on versus not just choosing to not confront it. And like that was another full circle thing, is like talking about the second buck that I harvested this year. I hunted that deer for 3.5 years, and I spent most of the time hunting him in like this tiny bubble where I was too timid to just charge in there, because at the time he was the biggest deer I'd ever seen on camera in North Carolina. I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to hunt another deer like this on public land, in North Carolina specifically. And I was like, I can't ruin this. I can't mess it up. Even though like I would go that summer and go to events and preach to people, you got to get in there. You got to go after it. He's probably right there. Just do it, gung ho. But then in my own life, I'd be like sitting there at the truck at 3 a.m. being like just twiddling my thumbs, like in a shell, because I should push 100 yards further, but I was too afraid of ruining or dealing with that confrontation or messing something up, And it took me like coming into the season and being like, I'm never going to get this done if I don't just force myself to get in there and deal with it. And like figure that deer out and take some risks and set up in risky spots, and maybe I'll blow them out. And it's like, dude, I made that decision, and the first day I was literally texting my buddy John and Chris, and I was like, I think I'm going to go set up in this spot. I was like, it's a spot that I called the tunnel, and I was like, I'm going to go set up there. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's in there in early season. Last season, I sat in this one tree for the better part of a month and listened to what I'm sure was him spar in this spot for like 30 days and never got off my rear end and went in there and like tried to shoot him. I was just like, he'll be out of here sometime, and he never came out in daylight. Yeah. So I go in there and I jump him bedded at the tree that I was going to set up in, and I was like just super mad at myself, just like kicking the grass. But I was like, okay, here's the deal. You've done the worst possible thing you can do. Like, so figure the rest of it out. Like, he's gone. He's run off. He's going to be gone for a week, or maybe not. But either way, he was where you knew he would be. Like, all last season, you're like, he's probably right there. And then you walk in there, and the first time you're there, he's right where you knew he would be.
Yeah.
Like, literally laying 15 yards from the tree that I was going to set up in. So it's like, from that point on, I was like, it was kind of like a reminder to myself of the same type of things that you can preach in conversation with your friends. Is it's like, oh yeah, I need to be getting after it. I need to be like pushing him and like moving and like taking risks. And it's like, yeah, maybe he won't be back here in daylight again, but he may be 80 yards up there. So like, I'm going to throw a sit there and I'm going to throw a sit here. And then I just kept bouncing around until ultimately, like in late November, like I bounced into the spot that I had been telling myself once again for 2 years. I was like, I bet if I sit this spot on this creek conjunction on this wind, I can get him. And I was always too afraid to sit there. And then finally I got the right wind and I went in there and sat and I shot him at 10 a.m. And it's like addressing those problems and addressing those challenges instead of being too timid to get in there and to accomplish that, like mirrors the importance of being able to do that in your personal life too. And like that goes the same way for like my relationships with my family and other things. It's like, it's easy. The easy thing is to sit back and be like, he'll come out here, he'll be here. Like, you know, and maybe he will, you know. My encounter with him in 2024 was right at dark and I couldn't see my pins and I couldn't shoot him at 10 yards. And it's like, yeah, he did come to me, but I had no control over the situation. Mm-hmm. I let the world dictate what happened versus dictating what happened to me, myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I feel like with, you know, all the stuff that was leading up to it, and anybody that's listening, it's like, okay, you know, I hope you can see in between the lines of how all this does lead up to this success. Because and that's not what this whole entire podcast is about by any means, but all that having your head right and thinking and making those decisions. Because I've come to learn from doing the scouting camp and being around a lot of people that, you know, ask for advice, and they show me pictures and maps and stuff. A lot of people know how to find deer.
Oh, dude, way more people know what they're doing than they think they do. They just second guess themselves.
1,000%. Yeah. They don't have the confidence to try this or go in there, or they're worried about making that mistake.
Yeah.
And when you are able to let go of that a little bit, you still want to be smart, and you're not just like, whatever wind, I'm just going to blow in there because I need to chance it. But when you put those things that you know and that you've learned and you've thought about, you put those things in alignment and you just execute on your plan.
Yeah.
Which it's so much easier for me to sit here and say that
than to do it.
But I 1,000% agree with you.
Well, it has to, as long as it's an active thought process. Like, I can't harp enough that it's not, I am certainly going to continue to struggle with it. Everybody will. It's not like something that you just take a pill and you're better at, or like, I had a good season, so I'm never going to have that problem again. It's like, it's just that, like, you have to be actively thinking about what you're taking into the woods with you, what you're learning from your process, when, like, push the boundaries, make mistakes, and it's okay. And then why you're out there. And like, I think those questions, and then just being okay with the decision that you make. Like, if you bump him, you bump him. If you pick the wrong tree, you pick the wrong tree. If you pick the right tree, you pick the right tree. Just live with the decision that you make in that moment, and then learn from that, and then be able to then reflect on it. And I think it's all part of our growth as a hunter. And like, I was, you know, like pre-2023, I think I was better about that, you know, because I was kind of like we were just starting, you know, 2017 to 2023, we were starting our business. I was traveling a lot for work, and I was just kind of hunting when I could. Like, I would travel and everything was new and fresh. And I was always like, you know, people talk about like, man, I hunt so much better when I'm out of state. It's like, not really. You just take more risks. You just stumble into stuff that when you're back home, you don't take those risks on, And then I had 2 bad years. I had a bad year and a half. I had a lot of opportunities. But like I shot and lost 2 different deer in 2023, and then I missed a giant deer in 2024. And like I was just so caught up in my head in those years because of like where I was at in my personal life, where I was at in business, where I was at in where I felt like I needed to perform from an industry perspective, and from the people that I was lucky enough to share my experiences with, or who came to me and confided in me like, hey, I need help in hunting,
Yeah.
That like I was so focused on that I wasn't focused on like just like being out there and just like being in the woods, just doing the thing, And then this year where I was like, I'm not traveling. I'm not going to Illinois. I'm not going anywhere. I'm hunting right here at home. I'm going to hunt the best that I possibly can, and I'm going to be the best version of myself at home and try to kill the best deer that I can at home and just like reset. And that's exactly what I did this year.
All right, so I'm gonna flip this slightly. So outside of the philosophical approach, are there any similarities or things that you feel like from a tactic standpoint or feeling like that, what led you to the success? Was there any similarities in those 2 deer, or were they separate?
No, there were, well, I want to be careful about how much I share about this.
Well, yeah, and we don't have to.
From a public perspective, there's, I hunt all over North Carolina. Yeah, a lot of North Carolina. So, but as everybody knows, it's like kind of cutthroat. But I think that the big thing is sanctuary. Like that's the most relevant thing that I would hope people take away from, whether you're hunting in North Carolina or you're hunting in Pennsylvania or you're hunting in Illinois. I know so many guys that preach it, and it's the reason it's preached is because it's so important. Is security and sanctuary. Is like you can't kill a big deer if there's not a place for a big deer to survive. So if depending on what your goals are, right? Like if your goals are to harvest a 2-year-old, well, you may not need like really, really, really valuable, really deep sanctuary cover to be able to harvest a big deer. But if you're like, I want to harvest in Western North Carolina a 7-year-old buck that scores, 140 inches or better, maybe that's your goal. Well, you better find a place that they can freaking survive, because there's hunters, and then there's not a lot of good there's a lot of good landscape where they can eat and forage, but there's not a lot of great security cover and depth of cover where they can survive. And then you have to think about like, how can you hunt them coming and going from that cover in a way that's like responsible. But depth of cover is so key, I think, and that was part of what made both of these deer like be able to just exist as long as they did on public land. And any of the other big deer that I have on camera right now, they all exist in places where one, it doesn't always mean that it's challenging for people to get to. Like the one deer I shot, 700 yards or 500, between 500 and 700 yards from the road. And the other deer I shot like a long way away from the road. So the reality is that it's about the landscape and zooming out, taking a 10,000 foot view of where you're at and being like, okay, I can hunt here, but a big deer can live here, 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 here. Or he can travel from here to here and I can intercept him here, right? And then being like, how much of that area is he hunted on? If you're on Pennsylvania big woods land and you're looking at whatever, like if there's a giant like laurel thicket that's on a south-facing slope that's a mile wide, well, that's enough cover that a deer could survive in, right? Mm-hmm. Versus like if you choose a different mountain and there's a half-acre laurel thicket, it's not that there may not be a big one there. It's that the odds of him being there are less likely because it's a lot harder to survive in a half-acre laurel thicket than in a mile-long laurel thicket, right? So when you're approaching both public and private land, I think it's important and applicable to both, is focusing on sanctuary locations. I don't necessarily put a lot of stake, and didn't for either of these deer, in where they were eating, like, or necessarily where they were bedding, but instead focusing on path of travel security cover, going from one place to another place, and then the ability for them to have like really truly viable sanctuary spots where it's like, I know if he's there, he's not hunted, or if he's here, he's not hunted. So that gives me the or at least it's too difficult. He has so much of an edge that he's not going to get killed there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I like what you just said there, because this is something I feel like where people do get hung up, including myself, is trying to have every piece of the puzzle of like, where exactly are they feeding? Where exactly are they bedding? I gave up for the most part on singular beds a long time ago, because I haven't, in the areas I hunt, this is not saying across the board, I'm saying the areas I hunt, I don't find deer bedding in singular beds a lot.
I agree.
And I think, and a lot of deer will use same beds sometimes too. I've seen it from putting cameras on it. There'll be different deer. Different I've been talking all day. Different deer using those beds and everything. So like finding that security stuff, and sometimes not. Just so you know, there's a deer there. He's there for a reason. You may not have to have every piece together. Yeah. That's enough to go off of. And obviously, like I want to find as many things as I can to help build those blocks into giving me a little bit more of odds of success in it. But you don't need to have everything.
Yeah, you just need, like, I kind of focus on, like, once again, prioritization, right? So like if I'm a deer and if I'm an old deer, the number one thing on my agenda is surviving. It's just living. Like that's the first, like their priorities are eating, sleeping, and making more deer. That's what they care about. It's the only things on their agenda. To do all of those things, they first have to be alive.
It's not a bad agenda.
It's not a bad agenda. It's a pretty good, that'd be a great agenda if that was all of our responsibilities.
Yeah.
But like they can't do any of those things if they're not alive. And it's like when I think about hunting and pursuing like a big deer, I think it's easy at times to get hung up on the fact it's like, oh man, what oak flat is he going to? It's like, well, most of these deer are not getting to that oak flat in daylight anyways. So like, I'm not going to try to burn the ends of that, like at that oak flat. I'm going to try to like figure out what's the safest place for him to go from A to Z. Like, and then how can I hunt that spot? Like, what wind do I need to hunt it? What's the safest possible place for him to be, or the least likely place for him to encounter people? And oftentimes it's the most difficult place to hunt him, right? Both of these deer, I was hunting in places where it's like they're there because of the fact that they're very, very, very difficult to kill. It's right there.
It's a good spot.
It's a good spot, you know? And like everybody's like, oh man, well if you go hunt there, then your wind's wrong. Well, it's like sometimes it's going to be wrong. Like, but it's just like you can't know that there's swirling winds in a spot if you don't get in there and drop milkweed. So it's like, you won't ever learn it, and it's just like, I prioritize, like you said, beds are one thing if you're in the Midwest. Like if I'm hunting like big river bottoms in Iowa or in Wisconsin or Minnesota, or but like creek drainages, not a river bottom, a creek drainage in the Midwest, and there's just only so many places for them to bed because it's all ag fields. So you might be able to be like, he's bedding on that point. I know he's there. And that's its own challenge, right? Is getting to proximity of when he's going to get up and hunt him. That's its own hard thing. But back east in big timber, whether it's southern big timber or northeast big timber, they bed in like 200-acre blocks. Like they could be anywhere in this huge swath of land, but there's only so many safe places for them to go from A to B. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not about where they're bedding. It's about the fact that he may bed in a couple acre area or a 60-acre area. But when he goes from that area to this area, what is the safest route for him to do that? And sometimes that's a big steep drain off the side of a mountain where they'll go right up the gut of the drain because they're less visible. Sometimes that's a super deep thicket. Like sometimes that's like, a north-facing slope, like Nathan Killen would talk about, where they can stay lower in the mornings and get more thermal pull before they make their shift up, and it makes them more difficult to hunt, but it gives him more advantage, right? Like there's a variety of those things, but kind of like thinking about it from the perspective of security as the primary goal. And that was what allowed both of the deer that I harvested this year to be alive. But then playing off of that is it's their biggest advantage and simultaneously their biggest weakness, right? Because if you know that they're prioritizing security and you can like point to what the chink in their armor is, which is usually like pre-rut, when they're just going to dip in and out or be slightly late to come back, or post-rut when they're looking for the last doe, or they're just, they're tired, they're worn down, they've been out all night feeding and they're just a little late to come back to bed in the morning, or they're getting up a smidge earlier to go get some food or to get water. Those are key times where you can catch them in like that security cover movement path where they're really susceptible to getting harvested because they're there because they feel safe. And then you have deduced like the only place that you can be to get them. And oftentimes it's so thick or so inconvenient that they don't even suspect that you're there. Like both of the deer that I shot were just moseying along. Like they weren't even, it wasn't something that they they didn't even think to look up. Everybody's like, oh man, in my region, they look up. They were born looking up. The deer looking up in the sky. And it's like, I could tell you the same thing. Hunting deer in North Carolina is freaking tough. And like they come out of the womb looking up, But the reality is when you hunt them in security cover, they're just kind of doing their thing.
Yep.
Because they're there because they feel safe. Versus like if you hunt them in a big wide open oak flat off the side of a hill slope or off of a mountain face, dude, they're switched on.
Yeah.
And guys are always like, man, this deer jumped the string on me. I was like, well, you're probably hunting him on a food source,
Yeah, where they're used to running into people and looking up. That makes total sense.
Yeah, it's like you ever watch like a gazelle at a water hole or like a deer in a field when they're just like eating. There's like every 5 seconds, boom,
yeah,
boom. It's like it's cool. Like I'm not gonna say like it's not a cool fantasy to be like I want to sit on a bean field and watch a 160 cruise across that field and be able to make a cool shot. That's cool, and the aesthetic of getting able to see that and have that experience. But it's much more viable to get a harvest in an area where like you have like a 2 foot by 2 foot hole in the timber to shoot down through on a singular trail. And you just know it's like, if he's coming through here, he's going to be on that trail. And You're banking everything on that because he will eventually, and whether you're like a guy like Nathan or Jason who will sit like a funnel for 3 consecutive days until that buck shows up, or whether you're bouncing around a thicket like I am, in North Carolina or, whatever I get to travel in, like the principle is the same. It's like find where you can intercept their travel path, where they're secure or they feel secure based on thermals, wind, security cover, wherever they feel like they have an advantage. And then don't like think too far out. Like just focus on that chink in their armor, and like you may move like 40 yards this way or 60 yards this way or 80 yards this way, hunting that same system of movement, that same path of movement to give yourself an advantage or to be dialed in for a wind or whatever you want, whatever you need. But you're hunting the same chink in the armor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I enjoy listening to your thought process and how you look at it, because I do. I think because the way you just explained that, and I hope everyone listening picks up on it, but I believe that the way you explain that can be applied to anywhere of thinking of those principles.
That's good. Nobody know where I'm hunting currently. It can be applied to anywhere.
Guys, I'll put the coordinates in the show notes.
You're going to drop a Spartan Forge pin in the comments below. Yeah. Dang it, Beau. I sent you that privately.
Yeah, don't worry. I got you, buddy.
Actually, I killed that in Northeast PA.
Hey. No, but we are going to get kicked out of here in the next 10 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap this up. But Jacob, I thought that was an excellent podcast. I think it's a very I think the way that was explained, if you want to like throw this all back to tactics, I'd say this is one of the most uncommon tactics, and it's your philosophy in your mind that you used to kill these deer. And
I appreciate that.
And man. I think there's something to be said about that, and I think a lot of us can learn from it. So I appreciate you sharing that and putting it out in the way that you did. Like you said, you weren't sure if you were going to even post those deer online, and I'm glad that you did, because when I read it, it was thought-provoking to me personally, and I think that's good.
Cool, man. Thank you. Well, like I'm a product of the people. Like I try to attribute like where I'm at in my life is a product of the people that I'm around and that I'm able to be, to learn from. And you're one of those folks, as well as, quite a few other hunting friends that are your friends as well, that I surround myself with, and try to like think like introspectively about the way that they approach things, not only in life, but also in the woods, and then challenge myself to try to match that, or at least to better understand their ideology. And I think that, if I can do that for somebody else, then it means that I'm sharing what I've learned from you, and I'm sharing what I've learned from Nathan, and I'm sharing what I've learned from Cody, and all of those people in a circle. I'm able to share like the small details of how they've rubbed off on me, right? In both life, but also in the woods, so yeah, it was a good podcast.
Yeah, man. I truly did enjoy that. And you want to tell everyone where they can check out some of your stuff? And
Yeah, of course. So if you're interested in anything to do with like our film work or our creative work, you can follow Land Limited on Instagram. You can also follow us. We've had Beau on our podcast, on the Outdoor Creatives Co-podcast. It's hosted by my business partner and best friend, Matt, as well as might as well be business partner, Adam. Awesome dudes. They're super entertaining podcast that has to do with anything you want to learn about creativity and being better in the outdoor space, getting some BTS on how Beau came up with some of his recent film work when he was on. Mm-hmm. But other than that, you can find me personally on Instagram at the Lishen. That's TheLishen. And feel free to shoot me a DM, stay in touch. I can't always get to everything, but I try my best to. And that's just because my attention span doesn't give me the opportunity to respond to everything. Not because
we're not meant to deal with the amount of the amount of ways to be communicated to online. That's a whole nother subject.
Not because my DMs are overflowing with messages, but because I'm bad at responding. But yeah, I those are the places you can find me, and then a slew of other places if you follow Land Limited on Instagram, you'll see some of our cool film work, and I encourage you guys to go follow and support the partners that support us and allow me to live this life that I get the chance to do. So
it's awesome, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Well, all right, let's go grab another beer, and then we have to walk. We got to head out. So I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate you taking the time while you're here in Nashville to sit down and talk to me. I really do.
It was a good time, dude. Wouldn't miss it.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week. Hey, guys. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.